but they began to observe these unusual capabilities. They couldn't explain them in terms of the known physics, and yet, as you look at sort of how all this is evolving, and then you look at the current protocols. I mean, the Navy just initiated a new set of rules in 2006 for, on page 9 of these new set of rules, it gives you the rules for mind control experiments. So the stuff's never ended. I mean, there's an open RFP of the Air Force looking for new methods for controlling behavior using techniques that capitalize on electromagnetic field effects. And so these things haven't gone away. They just become more and more sophisticated on the backdrop of higher technologies, totally unregulated once again, and a big enough concern for governments to start being a little bit alarmed. And we pushed the issue of mind-altering technologies back when we were first dealing with the HARP issue. And in 97, actually 98 and 99 is when we did our biggest work in the European Parliament. In 99, we actually got a resolution that addressed some of this idea of manipulating human beings. And it was in the context of the most important security and disarmament resolution the European Parliament ever passed. And it was resolution A40005/99. And we had demonstrated an infrasound device, a device that would transfer sound, so you could hear that proverbial voice in the head. Mm-hmm. And since that time, of course, Woody Norris developed a wireless version of this, and he won the MIT Lemelson Prize a few years ago in 2005.
I think he's also making a flying car.
Yeah, he may be. He's a really
I think it is. Yeah, he is. Okay.
And he is, as far as I know, is a pretty good guy. In this technology, it's an interesting one, this idea of projection of sound, but how it could be used and the various ways it can be used do concern a lot of folks. In this case, the European Parliament passed a resolution, and this is what it says in one line. It calls for an international convention introducing a global ban on all developments and deployments of weapons which might enable any form of manipulation of human beings, unquote.
Well, they haven't told us that because we've got one.
Right. And here we are, and I think it's important, it would be very important to see some U.S. legislation along the same line, and more importantly, maybe more disclosure about the technologies and a more open discussion. And unfortunately, there's a real shortage of technically informed folks within our legislative branch of government, because most of this is so new, and the people with real power in the Congress are the most senior, with the least experience, perhaps in real terms, of some of the technologies that are surrounding us. They have to rely on experts in closed meetings for much of the classified discussions on technology. And I think we are missing something in this, in that we are not getting a fully accountable bureaucracy developing technologies that really change the dimension of personal privacy in this century.
Do you believe that we are being manipulated right now on a worldwide basis in some form or fashion?
In an overt way, absolutely. In fact, what we just said about fear and how fear works on consciousness and on our ability to make decisions and be moved as a population rather than being directed on our own accord as a group of free-thinking individuals, I think we see that in the way that national propaganda is developed by every country. It's basically using fear. I mean, I don't care whether you're the minister in the pulpit using fear to motivate the congregation or the government. It's not much different. But as a motivator, it doesn't last very long, and that's what I think everyone comes to realize is real motivation has to come from the inside out and be intrinsic to what we're looking for. And I think in the long run, we're defeated by this. Just in terms of what it does, if you analyze the brain under an EEG, and you can see clearly what happens, and it can be so simple, and in most cases it is. And I think that's what a lot of us lose sight of, is it's in the calm light of day that our best decisions are made, because that's how we're intended to operate, not in a constant state of agitation. Even if you look at the technology that surrounds us, and most people will recognize that sense of exhaling, if you will, your whole body relaxes when the power grid goes out. It's not just how quiet it is, but your whole body kind of exhales. And it's because you're no longer compensating for those electromagnetic fields that surround us all the time. Now, the idea that you can oscillate a signal on any one of those carriers that are creating that underlying stress that can deliver a lot more. And this is written up in a paper, well quoted, The Mind Has No Firewalls. We quoted the first time back in 99. It was published, I believe, in 98 or 99, U.S. Army War College. And it was a discussion of a Russian military journal article called Orienteer on the idea that you could use radio, TV, internet. The power grid itself could be modulated in such a way as to influence the behavior over anyone in close proximity to that signal. And when you think about information warfare in the 21st century and where that goes, it's going to be more than just hacking through your systems to steal your identity. It can be as subtle as carrying a signal that influences general behaviors. In fact, the Morrises, who were aired on the same CBC Canadian Broadcasting special as I was, were folks that were involved in the early discussions in the Reagan-Bush era of Star Wars weapons and some of these exotic weapons, and they reported on what they saw in the Soviet Union. And essentially, the technology had been around for at least now over a decade, that you could, in fact, embed these signals through the Internet, through any of these systems. And so the only question for them was, when has it been done and who's doing it? And the same thing they said, the other thing, important thing they said is, because these are known carriers, the way these signals come in, you could build a microcircuit that would screen them out of every electronic device, so you wouldn't have the threat of it. And yet we don't hear any discussion about that. We hear the opposite kinds of discussions.
Nick, do you believe that there's an ongoing program now to try to control and manipulate us? Publicity did not stop them.
I think so. I think so on a lot of levels because they keep getting caught. But do you remember there was a total surveillance program of the Pentagon at one time? That was the name of it. There was a program where they wanted to use really track you from cradle to grave. In fact, I think it was one of our major policy makers within the bureaucracy was making the comment that the Social Security number does a lot of that for us already. But when you look at sort of the total surveillance society, we really already have it. When you look at all your financial transactions, all your electronic transactions, all of this is easily monitored. And in fact, all your financial transactions can be monitored under SINFIN, which is set up by the federal government back in the late 90s to look at financial transactions. So they can look at your whole profile from every wire transfer, bank account, everything that you have that's electronically stored having to do with your financial data can be quickly ascertained and even interfered with. And this is technology that's been around quite a long time, as an example.
Well, one day they're going to push the button and lock us all out, huh?
Well, it's not so far out. I mean, think about what would that do? In terms of modern warfare, it's different than what it used to be. Because of all these technologies, the idea that you could wage a literal covert war against your own population or against someone else, and you have to identify these technologies in order to build the safeguards and initiate them. And I think the temptation is just huge. That's again why the discussion I think needs to take place. When we produced the meeting last year, we made all the video free, so people can go to like the Lay Institute site and see for free all the video that we produced, which was each of our presenters, and several of them talked about this area of sort of the next leap in human evolution. So well worth looking at, and the idea that consciousness, the idea of the mind. I mean, I think about all the great things that have happened, and I thank God for creative thinkers. I mean, go back to 1900 or around that time, and every scientist in the world was saying, heavier than aircraft can't fly, and then a couple of bicycle makers who didn't know it figured out a way to make it happen. And, the most brilliant things, Apple computers, guys in the garage, figuring out how to do it, didn't take a UNIVAC, didn't fill up a house. Each thing that really makes leaps happen because people pursue what they know to not be impossible. In other words, your belief drives you. Henry Ford in the V8, he wasn't an engineer, and every engineer he talked to said you couldn't make one, and he did it anyway.